pushes you to think in different ways that I didn't think I could. I failed French and tried Spanish, and that didn't work. But I realized that learning things in a classroom can be kind of painful. Sorry. You'll also notice that I have QR codes on each slide. So I've pre-tweeted for you. In case you're too lazy to type stuff about my talk, you can just paste those into a tweet, and we'll be all set. I work at Sauce Labs. I've been doing open source stuff for a long time. I love technology. What I really like to do is try to apply technology to do these interesting things that are sort of outside of the tech space. And so this is my latest thing that I've been hacking on, and it's called Immersion. Yeah, so I realize this is a JavaScript conference. Most of the talks are about JavaScript libraries or, I don't know, a new framework that you should use for MVC or something else. But this is nothing like that. And some of my favorite talks at conferences have been about an application of these cool technologies and how you can string all this stuff together and come up with sort of interesting products that people can actually use. So the point is, 2 years ago, I went to JSU, and it's sort of the first time I'd spent really any time in a non-English speaking country, probably other than Mexico. And I was like, this is really interesting. People are talking in all kinds of languages, and I can't talk to them. So then I Googled, and I said, what are the most spoken languages on Earth? And I went, there's a lot of people on Earth that I can't talk to. That's really weird to think about. So why aren't I able to do that? So I started looking into how your brain learns languages, and it comes down to immersion, basically. Pounding your head with different language ideas until things start to make sense. So it proposes a lot of really interesting new challenges that, as a developer, I hadn't really tried to make my brain do things like that. Writing new code is pretty straightforward because you kind of have constructs in your head of, the way programs work. But as a, like a native speaker of a language, you just use it, and you don't think about why or what you're doing or what the grammatics are, unless you've spent time focusing on that. Sorry. Some water here. So I spent sort of the last 2 years geeking out on linguistics. So what is the deal with this? Why is it interesting? Apparently, on Friday I Googled, why should you learn a language other than maybe just being a crazy person like I am? And apparently, it's good for your brain. They think, the National Geographic thinks that it can stop you from getting Alzheimer's and dementia. New York Times thinks it makes you smarter because you train your brain to ignore distractions in a different way. And it also gives you this really cool understanding of how your own language works and how it's different from other people, which can impact culture, which is why different countries that speak different languages have slightly different things about them that you wouldn't notice unless you got into language learning. It's a fun hobby. The social dynamics around languages are really interesting, but also, according to an unknown British dating service, it makes you hot. So we could all use a little bit of that, I guess, right? So the point is, like, being bilingual, the quote, is one way to keep your brain active. It's a part of cognitive reserve approach to brain fitness. That kind of sums it up, but really it's just a good thing. It's kind of a fun thing to do. Immersion takes a lot of time, and you kind of have to be committed to it. And so I thought, well, I could spend the next year doing whatever I normally do, watching movies and building dev tools, or I could try to learn a language. I was like, eh. But then I went to Oktoberfest, and I was like, they have more fun than we do, and so I need to get a piece of this. So languages are sort of 4 pieces: reading, writing, speaking, comprehension. And practical use is the thing that sort of keeps you going and makes it interesting. So I sort of focused on comprehension because there's movies and there's audio and there's various different kinds of media online that are in a different language and give you this interesting other perspective. And so I thought, well, how do I do this? And I did a Google, and everyone was like, well, the only way to learn a language is to go there and spend time not being understood and annoying people. And I was like, well, okay. I could probably do that, but is there another way I can do this? So the next sort of most effective approach was people watching media and then reading about the vocabulary that they had seen. And so I thought, computers can do that. They're really good at repetition. And when you hear something over and over again with some context, eventually it starts to make sense to you. So the project. I decided that since really the only technology that I really love to work with is web technology, I would build a web app, some browser extensions, and a mobile app that will find ways to continually immerse you. The other hard part is finding interesting media in different languages. I sent Nuno an email and I was like, hey, tell me some movies in Portuguese, and he sent me like 6, and I Googled for like 2 hours and didn't find any more. Sebastian, my coworker, I was like, every time I see him, I'm like, give me some new German music, give me some movies to watch, give me something that I can get some new context, because that's sort of what keeps it interesting and excites me to kind of keep expanding my vocabulary. So trying to learn all your vocabulary up front is tough, and you kind of have to like let it seep in over time. And watching a couple hours of movies every day, which I do anyways, seemed pretty reasonable. And I also want to be able to track my progress and collaborate with other people. So the technology is basically all the things. It's all the open source stuff that we talk about. There's the Node, and I started with Bootstrap, and I was using Nano to talk to CouchDB. But there's this really amazing project called CMU Sphinx, which is a Carnegie Mellon project, and the goal is to basically be Google Translate's audio feature in an open source way, which turns out to be unbelievably complicated. So when I signed up to do this talk, I then went and tried to set this project up and get it running, and that took like a month because linguistics is insanely hard, and I was not expecting that. So that left me the last week to build the whole basically product. Fortunately, there's all kinds of awesome services that you can use by probably a lot of people in this room, at least a couple of them I know. So I didn't have to learn everything there was to know about FFmpeg, and I didn't have to set up my own CouchDB hosting, etc. So gobs of JavaScript, it was fun, and I'm really interested to see what happens. So I will show you the thing. I knew that there was a chance that you would all be tweeting my QR codes and I couldn't use the internet, so I made a video. Okay, so the app's called Immersion. It's a standard web app. It kind of looks like a startup, and then you sign up and log in, which is great. But the main goal is, like, if you happen to have some media in another language, you can just go ahead and upload that, and then, well, I guess I paid Transload a bunch of money, but it winds up on the internet. And in a web-friendly format, so that I can start doing things to it, parsing out audio and running the audio through various kinds of parsers. So after we have a couple of these, people can log in and watch. So here I'm selecting the language was German, and then it was the easy level. These are all my test movies, but the idea is that each of these would be some sort of a documentary or a movie or a podcast or something, and when I click on them, you'd get a description and stuff like that, but I didn't get to finish that. But the point is, when you click on one of the movies, the thing just starts playing. Now, my strategy was I would find all of this content in different languages, and I would sit there watching it, and I would write down any words I didn't know, just over and over and over and over again, bazillions of them, probably for like 3 to 4 hours a night. And over time, I sort of just started recognizing them. But pausing something is a pain, and I spend most of my time at a computer, not really in front of my TV. So while this is playing, every time I hear something that I don't understand, I hit the W key. And so if you see down below here, it says processing a word, flagged at around 11 seconds into the movie. And so imagine this is not a bunny movie, right? Because there's no talking in this. That doesn't make any sense. But as these are getting flagged, those are the actual small, within 5 seconds, I try to do some analysis on that audio clip to find out where the word is and how long it is. Right now I'm erring on the side of a longer audio clip, but they're getting converted into these little clips, and I'm storing some other information about them. So then I have this artifact, which is what the movie is, the actual sound clip, and then for context, I can click jump to, and I can go back to that place in the video. So the idea is I'm going to have these vocabulary lists that I can sort of navigate. So then the next feature is to put in what you think it sounds like in that language spelled out, and hit search. And the idea is to get what that is in English. However, I didn't get a chance to implement that because I fell asleep on my laptop last night. But I did write a node module called WD.js, which, because when I was playing with this earlier, I kept hitting Google rate limit stuff, and I'm worried about overusing their API and getting turned off. So I wrote a module that uses WebDriver to bring up Google Translate from all the different machines in our cloud randomly. So as you can see here, it does a suggestion as to the thing that you wanted. So this is the module that I'm going to use in the app to do the suggestion. Obviously, there's a more cool thing that you can do, which is to introspect the audio and actually come up with a suggestion about what that is in the other language. So Sphinx has some pretty cool stuff. And one of their better examples, transcriber jar. And what that does is, as the audio is happening in real time, it's figuring out where the words were. And because I don't have the whole language model, it just puts in a random word of similar length. So as you can see this running, it's listening to people talking in audio, which is pretty cool. So that means that whenever I can figure out how to get Sphinx to work correctly, and I get the language model set up, that when you bring up that box, it will automatically tell you what the suggestion is for that word. So on the account page, it shows you the movies that you contributed. But also the thing that excites me more about this is the idea that, like, if we're all using our setup of this and we're sharing content with each other, if it's on a hosted server, it's probably illegal and I'm going to wind up getting sued. But if you guys have your own setup, since it's using CouchDB, if I structure the databases correctly, we could have a listing where we could replicate from each other to get content. And since everything's sitting on S3 and it's available, it's a way to collaborate without anybody being exposed. So the next part of it is like, yeah, you go do this thing, and then you go off to do other things in life. You need to be roped back in somehow so that you keep touching your brain with different parts of the language. And so I'm going to build a Firefox extension and a Google Chrome extension so that as you're browsing, it will pick from one of the active movies that you're watching. And so at the end of watching one of these movies, you have a list of words. And the goal is that as you go through your day, occasionally it will say, hey, what does this word mean? And as you are learning them, after you know it 3 times, it'll get checked off the list. And once you've checked off all the vocabulary associated with the video, I will prompt you to say, hey, come back and watch this movie. You should be able to watch the whole thing. And you may have a new list this time, and you narrow that down. So over time, you're sort of tracking your project as to the levels of difficulty and the vocabulary associated with videos. And similarly, I would like to get an SMS or have a push notification pop up on my phone as I'm sitting on the bus saying, I don't know, was bedeutet abgefahren? And then I could say, oh, that means this thing. And after a while, I'll just know it. Still in the video, shoot. We're doing on time here. So I've just been doing German, but I really want to do Portuguese and French, and obviously there's so many more languages, and if people start contributing, we can have this sort of cool community happening. All right, we're almost through the video. So yeah, developers, awesome. This is all open source, and it's totally just for fun, and I would love to get anybody who's interested in hacking on language stuff to help me out and contribute. I have the directions. You can basically follow them up. You get your transloaded account, you get your Node.js account, you get your GitHub account, and then you walk through the steps, and then you basically have an instance of this running, and you can start hacking on it, because everybody has slightly different itches, right? So I put the whole thing on GitHub, and it's far from complete, but sort of what I'm trying to sell is the vision that a community of people helping each other find resources for language learning would be pretty cool. So that's the end of my movie. I'm not done yet, though. Okay, play. Okay, so anyways, the challenge were obviously, how do I get it into your life so that you use it? And I said Firefox and mobile. How do I get people involved? I guess I go to conferences and say, you should hack on this stuff if you're interested in it. The other thing is I would like to have a hosted version that people can just go play with and use that has content that's legit. I know there's a bunch of repositories of content in different languages out there that you can legally distribute. Just finding them is hard. And so I would like to have the hosted version make that available. What's next? I found that when I'm listening to podcasts, if I have the visual representation from iTunes or something playing so that I can kind of see the flow of the language, it makes it easier for me to kind of keep tabs on what part of the conversation we're in. Building that collaborative replication part of the ecosystem, I don't know a whole lot about how that works, but I have done some replication stuff with Couch, and I totally think it's possible, but I'm going to need to get some help from the powers that be. The toughest part is doing real-time translation. With Sphinx, it makes it possible. They have the engine that does it, but you have to build acoustic and phonetic models for these languages. So getting a bunch of people involved and sitting there saying words, or the other thing is that after these words get cut from lots of people using it, I can use those to automatically build language models, which would be really cool because that's painful. And it's basically like saying, okay, I'm going to watch the Taga show, but I have every word from that episode cut into small audio files. Maybe I can automatically generate a Sphinx model. So that's sort of the goal. Sphinx is in C and Java. Having some nice Node integration so you can talk to it would be awesome. I haven't done C bindings for Node or C++ bindings for Node. I'd love to learn how to do it. And the other part is once I start actually analyzing this audio, I can possibly infer, okay, this is a sentence, here's the different parts of grammar, and it become a really useful learning tool. The side effects from the project, so I kind of stopped writing code for fun and did languages for fun 2 hours every night. Getting back into it to build this app has kind of given me an opportunity to dive back into the JS ecosystem, build some Node modules, eat my own dog food, and kind of learn about linguistics. And also, I get to come hang out at LXJS, which has been really awesome. And thanks so much to Nuno and the guys for putting this together. I have a slide that has all the links to all the things that you might have heard about or I may have referred to in this talk. There is no QA, so I should have deleted that. But thanks very much, and I'll be in Berlin and hanging out here, and I would love to talk to any people with ideas about this. And wenn du sprichst Deutsch, let's uns reden. Thank you.